episode of About the Authors, TV Crime Fiction Edition. I'm your host, Jake Brown. This book feels like a secret that I'm not supposed to share, but is too good not to. Set in New York City's art world, full of lies, money, and very messy choices, Reese Witherspoon recently declared of her book club's pick The Fine Art of Lying by Alexandra Andrews. Currently in development with Scarlett Johansson starring and producing at Universal Studios, while Who Was Maud Dixon, the New York Times predicted, was a buzzy first novel already bound for Hollywood, and that the Washington Post promised was rich with the most important ingredient in this strain of suspense fiction, inventiveness. And she joins us today to talk about it all. Alexandra, welcome to the show. So before you began entertaining us with your own stories, what could we have found authors-wise on the bookshelf that shaped you growing up?
I was always a huge reader. I read all the classics when I was a kid, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, et cetera, et cetera. When I was a teenager, I got really into Agatha Christie, which is perhaps not surprising. And I read all of her books. Um, and then, yeah, Joan Didion is actually the one who made me want to be a writer in the first place, because I always wanted to write nonfiction, not fiction. And I actually started out my career as a journalist, so it was sort of a late switch to fiction.
Now, diving into your debut on the page, as it begins, we meet Florence, who's 26, working as an assistant at the fictional Forrester Books, a publishing house in New York. A graduate of the University of Florida at Gainesville, she feels like a dowdy nothing burger among well-connected Ivy League graduates. With her chic clothes, supercilious attitudes, she imagines herself seated at a beautiful desk near a window typing away the New York Times previews of our story star, who at the same time we learn is devious, amoral, and skilled in the art of improvisatory grift. In short, an excellent anti-heroine for a book that explores theft in many forms, literary and otherwise, as suddenly a great new job arrives. The opportunity to work as an assistant to Helen Wilcox, pen name Maud Dixon, author of the runaway bestseller Mississippi Foxtrot, a coming-of-age novel about two teenage girls and a murder. Only Dixon's agent and Florence know Dixon's real identity, so there is for the aspiring young writer added friction of being party to a secret when Florence moves to Helen's house in the Catskills and starts the tedious business of doing this new work, mostly keeping her Machiavellian tendencies in check. Before you know it, Florence and Helen are off to Morocco to, quote, research Helen's new novel. Wow. Please, with all of that in play in the background, talk about the complexities of creating the narrative that follows, where one character appears to be the victim and the other the perpetrator.
I had wanted to write for such a long time, like 15 years, and I just wasn't doing it because of whatever, laziness, procrastination, self-defeat, etc. And then my husband and I were moving to Paris, and we knew it was going to be this 2-year stint. And so I gave myself an ultimatum, and I said, I have to actually write something like complete and submit it in these 2 years, or I'm just going to give up the dream of being a writer. I'll like just commit myself to a different career. And then it was around that time that I had reread The Talented Mr. Ripley. And it was when the Elena Ferrante books were very popular. Everyone on the subway was reading an Elena Ferrante book. And as it's a pseudonymous writer. Nobody knows who she really is. There was this intense fascination with finding out who she actually is. And so it was those two ideas coming together, this idea of identity theft and a pseudonymous writer, someone who writes under a pseudonym and nobody knows who she really is. And then I had this character of Florence, who was sort of this darker, crazier version of the part of me that wanted so badly to be a writer. And Florence is just desperate to be a writer in this very like kind of grasping, like you can just tell something's going to go wrong. She wants it so badly, and she sort of will go about any way to get it. And so Florence becomes the assistant to a very famous writer who writes under a secret identity. And ultimately, like, I don't want to give away too much in case people haven't read Maud Dixon, but ultimately it ends up being sort of this cat and mouse game between the real author and Florence, the new assistant, over like struggling over the actual pseudonym that is famous.
As the story moves forward, these two main characters keep switching roles the Washington Post offers, until the narrative turns into a cage fight where only one of them will walk out triumphant. What other questions are you considering in that respect at the heart of who is Maud Dixon?
I think my favorite My favorite thing to write is the dialogue, and I had so much fun writing the character of Maud Dixon that she actually was supposed to die quite early in the book, but I just like had to keep her around, and she's a huge element of the book because I just had so much fun writing her. I mean, she's nuts, but it was fun. They're both nuts. And she's just one of those people who's incredibly, incredibly confident and convinced she's right and holds no truck with an alternate opinion. Um, yeah, I'm sort of fascinated by people like that. I was thinking about how much I love Patricia Highsmith, and she always has the best settings for her books. And so I really did want to set it somewhere sort of cool in some far-flung locale. And so I did end up setting it in Morocco. It's also just fun for me as a writer, like to go there in my head during the day. Like it's more fun to go to Morocco and pretend I'm there than go to like, wherever, Idaho. Nothing against Idaho.
While you were writing, did you find you could call on your background in journalism, interviewing people, in the course of inventing their dialogue fictionally on the page here?
Claire is somebody who, on the surface, has the perfect life. She is married to a wealthy lawyer. They live in New York on Park Avenue in a penthouse. She she has like an adorable, healthy little toddler. But like beneath the surface, she's clearly not happy and things are not right. Um, she gave up her career in art to become a stay-at-home mother, and she's in this new sort of world of wealth and privilege, and she sort of feels like an imposter, and she sort of doesn't like it and doesn't know how to fit in and doesn't want to fit in. Um, her new mother-in-law is horrible, and yeah, I think she's just struggling a lot of ways. And she's lost this like spark, this sense of engagement with her life. And I think I was pulling from, I started this book during COVID. I had a newborn and a 3-year-old. And so that sort of like isolation of motherhood was heightened. Um, and I think a lot of parents feel this way, but I certainly felt this way where you lose yourself a little bit, and you're just so hyper focused on like the next hour, the next nap, the next feeding. Um, and you lose a little engagement with the outside world.
Now, you'd experienced your work in print prior there too as a journalist. How different was it here, seeing your name on the cover of your first published fiction novel?
It was so surreal. Oh my God. It was also COVID, which was a little strange. So I felt very like I didn't do any events. I didn't do a tour. When I went in to go see my book in a bookstore, I had my like N95 on. It felt a little distant in that way. Um, but every step, I mean, I didn't even think I could finish a draft. And then I finished a draft and I was like, I can't believe that happened. And then I was like, I'm never going to get an agent. I'm never going to sell. So every step of the way it was hugely exciting. Um, and I think I said to my husband at some point, like, if I just become a published author, like, I will just be happy for the rest of my life, which of course is bullshit because, like, you're still you have your same old worries. But I do sometimes sort of pinch myself. I do consider myself very lucky.
Alfred Hitchcock's long gone, and sadly not able to make the film version of Alexander Andrews' psychological thriller The Fine Art of Lying. The Boston Herald recently quipped, arguing it was worthy of such a high honor with its privileged, extraordinarily rich Manhattan blue bloods, insights into the contemporary art market, and most essential, torridly illicit sexual couplings, leading to the ingredients that serve the master of suspense so well in, for instance, Dial M for Murder. Wow, quite a complimentary comparison. Let's meet our potential movie star here, Claire Bast, who Deadline, amid announcing Scarlett Johansson's production company had acquired the property for adaptation, profile her as one who traded small-town Binghamton for Manhattan's art world, but 3 years after pausing her PhD for motherhood, is desperate to reclaim her identity. And please introduce us more formally to her co-stars, including Gabriel, a powerful socialite who opens doors to curators and collectors, and her husband Jed, who it turns out might have helped open the door to Claire, quote, feeling alive again, before her twists and turns take a potentially deadly turn.
Claire is somebody who, on the surface, has the perfect life. She is married to a wealthy lawyer. They live in New York on Park Avenue in a penthouse. She has like an adorable, healthy little toddler. But like beneath the surface, she's clearly not happy and things are not right. She gave up her career in art to become a stay-at-home mother, and she's in this new sort of world of wealth and privilege, and she sort of feels like an imposter, and she sort of doesn't like it and doesn't know how to fit in and doesn't want to fit in. Um, her new mother-in-law is horrible. And and yeah, I think she's just struggling in a lot of ways. And she's lost this like spark, this sense of engagement with her life. And I think I was pulling from, I started this book during COVID. I had a newborn and a 3-year-old. And so that sort of like isolation of motherhood was heightened. Um, and I think a lot of parents feel this way, but I certainly felt this way where you lose yourself a little bit, and you're just so hyper focused on like the next hour, the next nap, the next feeding, um, and you lose a little engagement with the outside world. Um, and I kept thinking, like, what, like I wasn't feeling totally like myself, which is fine. It's a discrete period of time. Like you have a one main focus. But I kept thinking, what if you made a decision when you weren't feeling like yourself and then it affected the rest of your life? Like it's like this bubble of time where you're a little wobbly and desperate. So that is how I got to Claire. In the book, Claire ultimately meets a dashing French art dealer and sort of starts to feel herself come alive again, feels this spark, feels this re-engagement with the art world, um, and and yeah, makes a decision that will almost destroy her life, I'd say. I was recently doing an interview where a male interviewer described Jed as the perfect husband and the perfect father. And he couldn't believe the way Claire treated him. And I think I take a little bit of umbrage with that. However, he's not a villain. And I did not want to make him out to be a villain, like in any way to like excuse Claire's behavior. Like, oh, well, she's got this cruel, abusive husband. He's a nice guy. He's just, he's grown up. He's like a mama's boy, he's grown up so protected. Like his parents pulled strings to get him into the right schools and the right internships and the right job. And he's just cosseted, and everyone's telling him how great he is and how smart he is, and his last name will open doors wherever he goes. And I think he hasn't fully developed as a human, maybe. And he doesn't make much effort to like explore worlds that are different from his own. Um, and I think ultimately he and Claire are just like kind of seeing past each other a little bit. I think I was really fascinated by the art world for a few different reasons. One, I'm just really interested in the role that like creativity plays in women's lives. I think I've done that in both my books. With Florence, it was like she wanted it so badly, it was a little dangerous. And with Claire, she's sort of feeling its lack of that in her life. But the art world is so different because a painting means so many things to so many different people. I mean, to an artist, it's like a labor of love. To a scholar, it's like something to understand and dissect. To a collector, it's a dollar sign. Or maybe to the dealer, it's the dollar sign. To the collector, it's a status symbol. It shows they've made it. Someone once told me like when like hedge funders get rich enough, they have to decide between whether they want to collect wine or art. And it's almost like this very like it's not necessarily from this deep seated like guttural feeling for the art. And the value of art is it's almost, art is so subjective. You can like this and like that, but people are putting a price on it and it is a commodity. And I found all those ideas very, very interesting. Claire originally moved from Binghamton, New York to New York City to work at the Met. And then she goes and she starts a PhD program at Columbia. And her focus is on this sort of enigmatic mid-century abstract expressionist named Blake Webley, who is entirely made up. When I originally started writing the book, that artist was Agnes Martin, who is an artist I really love. And for totally logistical reasons, it didn't work because her paintings are all really, really big. And it would be very hard to steal one. They're like 6 feet by 6 feet. And my husband he's also a novelist, suggested like, why don't you just make up a painter? And me with my journalistic background, I was like, I can't do that. But then I realized, of course, I could, and it was quite fun. Um, And I had read this book, Ninth Street Women, which is about the women of the abstract expressionist movement, which is such a fantastic book. And that sort of, I think that's what that milieu is what I pulled from because she really gets their personalities and like their social life and their intricate relationships. That's what I sort of pulled to create this pretend artist. And what originally brings Claire and Gabriel together is this painting of Blake Webley's called Longfin. And Gabriel happens to be holding on to it for a client and offers to show it to Claire because she has made her interest in this painter very clear. And so this meeting with Gabriel is all tied up with this re-engagement with this artist who has meant so much to her. So it's like, she's feeling the spark of art come alive again. She's feeling sort of this desire for Gabriel come alive again. And it's all sort of intertwined in this messy web.
Written with the panache of a suspenseful novel of manners, the Wall Street Journal admired, taking viewers inside the intricacies of plotting or investigation, after Claire's only hope, she decides, is to find out for herself who killed Gabriel, especially where the solution of that mystery seems entangled within the search for a stolen painting. It appears to Claire that someone's trying to frame her for several crimes, when the hum for readers of this well-crafted book comes from seeing its determined protagonists, trying to foil that scheme while ensuring poetic justice.
I wish I had a whiteboard and I wish I had post-it notes and up on the wall and color coding. I have nothing. I try to write an outline and I have learned over the past, whatever, 8 years that I've been writing that I really cannot figure out the plot without just like writing my way into it. It just, it doesn't make sense to me without writing it and having the characters live in it a little bit. So, I mean, I end up throwing out so many pages. I wrote a whole draft where there was a totally different villain in the book. It was somebody else did it. And then I had to go back and I was like, that doesn't work. I wrote a draft where Gabriel was actually an artist, not a dealer. And that didn't work. And I keep sort of fiddling with it, but it's just through writing and it's not through outlining, unfortunately, for me.
As Claire begins her own investigation into the twisty, shady, abundantly wealthy world of art collecting, Kirkus revered the way you entwine the language and imagery with color, texture, and art throughout this taut and well-written thriller. Who were any of the most colorful supporting cast players you amalgamized or caricatured here? And how useful was it to be in Paris while you were writing those scenes that take place locally there in Mitterhund?
I don't think it lent to the story, no. However, logistically, it was very helpful because I wrote in the mornings and the time change meant that like the New York Times wasn't updating, like none of my friends were awake, and I had this sort of pocket, and like I was doing copywriting freelance, my clients weren't awake. And so I had this pocket of time that was totally protected. But that might not be the romantic story you're looking for. My favorite characters to write were definitely Tasha Wolfe, who is sort of this over the top socialite. She's the wife of um, Jed's boss. Um, and then Jed's mother, Dorothy Bast, who's just sort of this very snobby, uptight, Upper East Side doyenne. And I think for the same reason that I loved writing Maud Dixon so much, I just love writing these characters who just have no filter and have these sort of like outrageous opinions and don't feel any shame about them whatsoever and will just scream them from the mountaintops. I think it's just very fun. I think that's why I don't outline because it's sort of like what makes it fun is that it's all like unfolding and coming together as you're writing it. When I have tried to write from an outline, it's just like, I don't know, I'm not feeling the spark. Things aren't clicking. It just feels sort of like drudgery. And I think that would probably come across on the page if I wrote a whole book like that.
At one point, amid their exciting consumption of the story, book reporter posited, what exactly has Claire gotten herself into? And how is she going to get herself and her family out? How early did you feel like you knew the answer to that question versus, say, wrestling with it while you were writing?
It was a different outcome before, a different villain. At one point, the pet rabbit Noodle got thrown out of a window. I had to dial that back. But I did know the way Claire and Jed end up in their relationship. I always knew that that was going to happen, that there was going to be some sort of change there.
Finally, before we run, any chance you left room up into that ending for a potential sequel here?
I'm really interested in the character of Elise Vargas, who's the art investigator. I would love to maybe delve into her a little bit more and an investigation that she does.
Alexandra, it has been thrilling talking today. Thanks so much for taking out time to be on About the Authors TV.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.